These 3 print paintings you will see me finish today. Hello print fans! I printed some backgrounds with oil paint and other paint in the first part of this video. If you haven't seen it yet, here is the link. And today I will print some more on 3 of them and work them out. At the end, I will ask you if you would like me to work out more of these backgrounds, as I have done so many of them. First, here is a quick step back to last week's video, printing this pink background. I picked up oil paint with acrylic paint, and you can see how they resist each other. That's what makes a relationship interesting, isn't it? I'm silly. So this is what it looked like first, and I wanted to do a laser print transfer of some woodwork or trees landscape. So I printed this older photo with my laser printer. For the laser print transfer, I'm using my trusty Liquitex Basic acrylics in Mars Black, which is always the most reliable for laser print transfers. I don't know why, but the Liquitex paint really works best for this. And having said that, I found out it just didn't work that well this time, but usually it works quite well. I'm taking off some paint that's surrounding the trees, and you will see later I haven't done a very good job of this. And then, as the Liquitex paint is already dry, I'm picking this up with a matte medium, turning the Gelli plate around and pressing it where I want it to sit. And let me remind you again, put your Gelli plate on a sturdy surface, plexiglass or glass, so you can turn it around better without it wobbling around. Yeah, well, that's really not so great, so I'm going to do this again, print it out one more time. And this time I'll do the transfer with the Golden Open slow drying paint, so I don't need a matte medium or any medium to pick it up, because it'll stay wet longer after you've transferred it, the photo to the gel plate. And you can see here it works really good as well. I'm cleaning around the trees as well, and actually I'm not doing it so thoroughly, because somehow I want this image to be dirty in a way. You see, if I do something really bad, I can always claim I wanted it that way. It overlapped a little, which is good, so that it doesn't seem to repeat itself. And I'm coming in with a stencil here. This is actually my favorite stencil of all the 200 stencils or so that I have. I use it all the time, and there's many that I haven't used at all before. So I'm just doing some black shapes, and afterwards some white shapes as well, and I will also work on them later, just to distract a little from this middle piece that is too dark. You see? I think that works nice. And I'm working out some of the tree shapes. Actually, I have to work out quite a lot here, because the print didn't go so well. And I'm always careful doing that, and doing it just slightly, and interrupting sometimes, so that the print feel doesn't get lost. And I'm also working out the stencil shapes, and it's not that I have something in mind that these stone-like shapes now should work as. It's it's just something I do intuitively and I don't think about it, really. I don't know what it's supposed to mean. And I really found over time that the less you think about what you want to express or show or whatever, and the less you think about it, the happier you are, and the more satisfied you will be with the outcome. Like, for example, here, that it was such a dirty print and you can really see the outlines of the gel plate. So I'm just following these lines and deliberately enhancing them. And that is actually quite an interesting graphic element. I'm also outside of this print with a black paint, so I'm working that out as well and see what it comes to later. If I put a frame over it, a passepartout frame, I have like up here on the right I smeared and I don't like that, but the shapes on the left I really do like. So I'm doing that and just showing the areas that I like. And yeah, almost there. I'm actually defining the borders of the gel plate print even a little more, making it more physical. And the shape of outside the image, I want to take on a little bit of the pink tone to have a connection to the rest of the image. It's not pink, but it's carmine red. And while I'm signing this inside the frame, I'm using a white pen and then the micron fine liner for the outlines of my signature. And I noticed that after I'd done this, the fine liner didn't work anymore. And I think it's because of too much contact with the original oil paint. So that's one thing I learned. Don't use fine liners on the oil paint. Whereas the workout with the pencil works astonishingly well. So this is it. And I really like it. Now for the next one. The blue background, it looks quite boring, but I'm gonna print over that and I have a good idea for this. I'm working with the Liquitex paint again, but this time no laser transfers. I want to print stones. And I see here that the paint layer is too thick, so I'm taking some off. And what I'm doing now is, I hope you can see it halfway. I'm putting in some retarder, mixing it with the black so that it stays wet longer. Because when I want to print stones, that's gonna take a while and I don't want to pick it up with the medium, so I want the black to stay wet. I'm trying the stones. Here you can see it closer. And it's working quite well, and I have the structure that they leave. But then I'll also be employing a tissue. And the tissue, it's a kitchen tissue with these little dots it has in the paper. So I'm crumpling it and putting it in the paint, because if you don't crumple it, if you leave it flat, the patterns would be too regular. And as they're not so regular, I think they're adding to the structures of the stones a lot. You will see that later. I've printed stones before, and but for some of my paintings, I also use the stencil that I cut myself in the shape of stones. But this time I want to use the real stones again. And as I press down the gel plate with the black stone outlines, you can already see that the result is very good. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. Now first I'm going to trace the outlines of the stones, give them some cast shadows. Even in the black you can make a black shadow. And here you can see that these dots that the tissue made, you can even see the tissue here that I'm working on. They're really good because they create these little holes, and if you give those some shadows, it's just very stone typical because they do have holes and nooks and crannies and so on. And as I'm doing this, I thought you might want to listen to my dog snoring for a bit. Yeah, well, maybe that's not too interesting. So I'll keep talking. So I have to create highlights, meaning sun is coming from top left, and so the light is coming from there, and so I'm giving a highlight to the whole of the stone, but also I'm highlighting some of the areas surrounding the spots, meaning the mountains and not the valleys. The mountains have to get highlights too. And some of the stones don't have a lot of structure everywhere. So in this case, I just look very hardly. I stare at this, and I always find an area where to put shadows. And if you don't have that even, then just invent some. As soon as you, like in this one, as soon as you have the shadows and the highlights, it just has so much more character, this stone. It's funny, you see those lighter areas in the stones. That was just when you saw the blue background. It was just the paper shining through those shapes. And it was really not very interesting. And now they really add to the fact that stones very typically have several colors, often two colors, and streams and stripes and so on. I'm a stone pro. I know everything about stones. And I love them. So I thought this one's finished. I like it a lot. I'm such a stone freak. And I especially like the highlights that were there even before, and I didn't have to add them, as you see in the beige areas. So I did the same thing again for another background because I love the stone so much. And here I'm also adding texture to the black background. And to tell you about the amazing thing of this stone printing is just you can see this background is not really that interesting, and whenever you have a background you think okay, it looks nice, but I don't know what to do with it. The stone thing almost always works, and as you'll see, it works even better with this one because you have the stripes going through the stones. When I printed this on, I thought, okay, well, I took off too much of that paint. So I'm trying to pick up the rest with a matte medium. And it's quite tricky to register the gel plate with the stones I've printed before because you don't see much through it. But it worked okay. So this is a base I can work with. So it's basically the same game. Making body shadows and highlights. And here there are so many little dots, and I don't know, it must have been in the original background print. It's so interesting. This one works even better than the blue one. Nice. And look at that. I wanted to show you this. I scratched the paint off. That's because of the residue of too much oil paint. This is the reason why I really wouldn't recommend printing on the gel plate with oil paint. I'd rather use etching ink again next time. And I usually teach that it is more interesting if you, like for example in this case, would leave the interesting jelly print structures inside the stones, and you don't make the background so detailed, or so, how do you say, yeah, just detailed, because it's more interesting if you have an opaque background and the pieces of interest, the stones, they're more detailed. But what the hell, I don't think I remember what I said the other day. I just think in this case it's the background is so lovely. And note here that I don't want to stick with the initial shapes of the stones. It was so inviting somehow to connect them to the background because of all these stripes there, that I thought it would be interesting if the stone is like mingling with the background. And so I decided to stop at this point because I think it's just time to stop and leave it imperfect. So I have managed to work out 3 of these prints this week. But tell me, should I go on working the other ones from part 1 out and make a third part of this session? Tell me in the comments, I'd really appreciate. This one I have already made and filmed. In any case, I'll see you next week. Bye.